trying a Carrie Stevens streamer fly today. This is a fly called the Grayhound. It is a classic type of smelt pattern. The gray, silver, white colors are all very, very popular for the smelt patterns and so on up in Maine and the Rangeley region, where a lot of these flies were developed. It's a wonderful little fly. I'm very curious about it for my local streams because we have some shad in the streams here that grow to about 1.5 inches or so every year that are a big target for the smallmouth in my area, especially in the fall season. This is a great little fly, by the way. You don't have to tie these all on these long hooks. You can shrink these down a little bit for your particular fishing needs. This one is on a Mustad 9672. Actually, this is an R75 because it's a straight-eyed hook. It's a 4 to 5x long streamer hook, so it's a little bit shorter. But this one is a really nice one that's, just about 1.5 inches. And I'm curious to see how this particular fly, the Grayhound in this version and this size, works this fall. So keep that in mind. If you like these streamers, you don't have to tie the long full length of these streamers to fish them in your local waters. You can adapt them a little bit and see if they work for you. So that's the Grayhound. It's very straightforward, typical Carrie Stevens fly, all the pieces and parts of that. But I'll get started tying. Start the Grayhound with my hook in the vise. This is a Partridge CS15 in a size 4. It's a 9x long streamer hook, kind of a classic streamer hook for these Carrie Stevens type flies. I'm going to go ahead and debarb the hook. For thread, I'm going to start out with a white. This is a Wapsi UTC 140 Denier in white because it has a red floss body on it, so I don't want to darken that floss up. And I'm starting out with 140 Denier. You could do a 210 if you want, but I'm going with a 140 because I can go from one end of the shank to the other a little bit quicker with this. I want to go ahead and lay down a base layer of thread here, and I'm going to work my way back maybe to 1/4 of a shank length away from the point of the hook, where I will tie in the tag. A little bit back right there. The tag is just some silver tinsel, and I am using a size 12 Danville silver and Mylar tinsel for this. I'm going to tie this in. Actually, I correct myself there. I'm using a size 14 Danville for this. You could use 12 if you want. It's a little bit bigger. It's a little wider. Certainly for the tag, it will work very well. I like the 14 for the rib, so I'm just sticking with the same tinsel for the rib and the tag. I'm going to advance my thread back to the point of the hook, bring it back forward, just trying to keep that fairly smooth, and then I will apply the tinsel for the tag on this. You can put these in either edge to edge or overlap just a little bit if you want. I want to try and keep any of the white thread from showing. Go ahead and tie that off and trim away the excess. The Grayhound has a tail on it, and it is just red hackle. You could use a red rooster hackle if you want. I'm going to go ahead and just use a little bit of red Schlappen for it. You want the fibers to be, I should say the barbs right here to be long enough so that where you tie these in, they're going to extend back past the bend of the hook, maybe about the same as the gap of the hook, quarter of the shank, something like that. They don't have to be real long. You don't need them like this. But you just want them to go back past the bend just a little bit. The butt ends right here of these barbs, I'm going to trim these at a little bit of an angle. That's just going to help give me a little bit more taper, make it just a little bit smoother at the back end here. A couple, 2-3 wraps to hold that in. Then I'm going to put in the rib, and the rib is just the same tinsel. It's a gold. It's going to be silver, so I'm tying this in with the gold side up. I'm going to pull that back so it's almost all the way back to the tail. You could leave this long if you want. If you're going to frame this or present this to somebody and you want to make certain it's really, really nice, then you might leave that a little bit long so that you get a little bit smoother body, but I think that this is going to be smooth enough. Using a Danville 4-strand rayon in red for the body. I'm going to use all 4 strands for this. Again, I'm going to tie these in. Not quite long enough. Let me get a little bit more. So one thing you don't want to do is to run out of floss or tinsel in the middle of putting the body in. So you're better off to go with a little bit extra. Got to be careful because sometimes it wraps around as you're wrapping it in and gets in the way. It can get kind of hung up on itself, but you're better off. I've got about a 10-inch length here. So I'm going to bring this in and tie this to the hook shank. You can certainly make this the length of the body if you want to keep that nice and smooth, or you can pull that back a little bit more. If this is a fishing fly, I'd probably just pull that back a little bit more and not be all that concerned about a bump in the back. Now advancing my thread forward, I just want to put this in nice smooth touching turns. Just trying to keep that underbody fairly smooth so that that floss doesn't have any ridges or anything in it. It's nice and smooth. This is where that 140 denier pays off. Again, you could use a 210. It's not going to bulk the fly up appreciably, but the 140 allows me to move from the back end of the hook to the front end just a little bit quicker. If you don't have the 140 denier, all you've got is, say, a Uni-80 or something like that, then just go ahead and use what you have. You just have to wrap it a little bit more. Trying to make certain that I don't get the floss body, because of the torque of the thread as you're pulling around this way, tends to pull that floss, and it wants to start to go around the hook shank in kind of a spiral. So I just stop every now and again and make certain that I kind of scooch it back over where it originally was on top or on my side so that I'm not getting a pronounced rib underneath it. My thread about an eye length, maybe to 1.5 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. I'm ready to apply that body. I'll apply the body here, and then I'll add in the tinsel for the rib. ribs on these, when you're tying these in, it's not as important in terms of the number of ribs that you have, as long as they're all evenly spaced. Now I'm going to change over to my red thread. The head on the Grayhound is red with a black stripe. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use my red thread. If this were even black with a red stripe, I would be attaching a red thread right now, because it's more difficult with a black head to put a couple of red bands on it. The red tends to darken up. You're better off going with the lighter color in the head here, and then put the darker band on top of it. For the red thread, should have mentioned this, I'm just using, this is a Danville 6/0 in red. There is a belly on this, and the belly is some white bucktail and about 5 or 6 strands of Peacock herl. So I've already processed some bucktail. The bucktail does not have to be very heavy. Usually it's actually pretty sparse in a lot of her patterns. It just gives the appearance of a belly, a lighter side on the belly underneath. I'm going to make that just past the bend of the hook a little bit. You could go as long as the tail if you want. Attach that in on the underside, keeping that down on the underside, and trim away the excess. And then I'm using some strung Peacock herl. I like for the Carrie Stevens patterns to use the strung herl, because it's generally already all together. I'm not as concerned of it if the herl's broken up a little bit or flat a little bit. Say if I'm doing a nymph or a, excuse me, a wet fly that has a Peacock herl body, I want to make certain the herl is a little fuller. So I've got about 6 strands here. You want 5 to 6 strands. I'm going to tie these in underneath, same length as the bucktail. And then I'm going to tie in the throat. The throat is just a red hackle. I'm going to use some Schlappen. So I'm going to choose a Schlappen feather that has some nice long barbs to it here that I can peel off and tie these in. I'm going to tie these in 3 clumps, by the way. And if I were doing this on a wet fly, or if I were doing this with just 1 clump, what I would do is I would take some barbs from one side here. I would peel those off right here, and then I would take the ones from the other side, peel those off, and I would match them up so it's nice and full. However, because I'm doing 3 on the Carrie Stevens patterns, I'm just going to take 1 from one side and then tie it in, and then some from the other side. So each one it's about half, but it ends up, because it's 3 small clumps, that it ends up being very full anyway. I don't know if that's how Carrie Stevens did it. I do believe that these were tied with 3 different clumps, sometimes 4 different clumps, in an attempt to try and mask over some of the bucktail here and everything, so that when you're looking at it, you're not seeing just the red hackle fibers here, and then right behind the head you might be seeing that. Of course, the wing's going to cover some of that, but anyway, I do believe that's how she did it. So I'm going to tie the bottom section in, and then I'll tie in the side, one of the sides. I'm just doing the one that's away from me here. These are a little bit short, but I can make them work. And then I'll take the last clump here and tie it on my side. You do want to make certain that you're not crowding the head on this. So the heads on the Carrie Stevens patterns tend to be a little bit longer, not necessarily fuller, just longer. So you want to make certain that you're staying a good eye length to maybe 1.5 eye lengths back for the head on that. So now we're ready for the wing. The wing on the Grayhound is just gray hackle, some jungle cock body feather, and the eye is some jungle cock. So I've got 2 gray hackles here that are put together so that both concave sides are going the same direction. I have a jungle cock body feather right here as a shoulder, and the jungle cock for the eye on that. I have 2 of these that I'm going to bring together. So I want to get the base of those together, but also I want to make certain that the tips are together. So if the base is a little bit uneven, that's fine. It's more important I have the tips together. These have already been pre-made, and I'm going to tie those in so these will extend maybe about 1/4 to maybe 1/3 of the shank length behind the bend of the hook. So I'll cut the excess off and then separate these and tie these in one at a time. So I'm going to tie the one on my side first. That way you can see a little bit better how I tie this in. And I don't tie this in directly on top or the side. I'm attaching this kind of in the upper quadrant area of the head of this. See, it's not right on the side of the top. It's just right up in this upper outside area, and the other one's going to be the same so that they come together. You can put them on the top if you want. The thing that I find is a lot of times what that does is the wing then, the bottom portion of the wing sets on the body and the wing tends to cock up a little bit. I want these running, if I can, right nice and parallel, right down flanking on the sides. So I'll tie the other one in. I'll match that up. Generally, when I tie these this way, they tend to, all those barbs from the various feathers tend to come together kind of towards the top or on the top. That one on that side's a little further forward. So I'm going to unwrap. You can do this a number of times if need be while you're tying these flies. Even if my first wing I put in a little too far back, I could unwrap at this point. But I'm going to leave that because it's going to give me the head that I'm looking for. It's just that this one went in a little bit too far forward. You want to get a number of wraps on that just to secure it so that it's not going to move on you. And then stop, double check that everything's going down the sides the way you want and it's nice and smooth all the way down through here. Also want to make certain that it is nice and vertical off the top of the fly. It's not kind of cocked to one side or at an angle. Now I'll smooth up the head area here using my thread. You could use a little bit heavier thread if you want. Just be careful with your wraps. Even if this is a 6/0, if I were to go up to say a 140 Denier or 3/0, you can bulk this up real quick if you're not careful. I just as soon go ahead and use the smaller Denier, and it gives me a little bit more control over the shape and size that I'm looking for. Take your time with it. Get it the shape you want. Once you have that done, we'll put in a 4 or 5 turn whip finish to seat the red thread here. Because my thread popped off right up under here, I risk it actually coming out from underneath as I'm doing the next step. So I'm going to put just a little bit of head cement on this right now, and then I'll attach my black thread. I just want to make certain that it does not come out from underneath. Really not a huge deal. You could undo that, take your thread back a ways, reattach your red thread, and then go and finish it. So for the black thread, I'm just using a 6/0 Danville in black. I'm just going to attach the thread just forward on the forward side of where I want that stripe to be, because then I'm going to bring my thread backward to the back side, and that's going to trap the tag end of that thread with a few wraps. I can clip the excess off. You don't want to put a large number of wraps in here because we don't want to bulk up this band of black. You're just wanting to put in a dark band of color. I should say absence of color here. So just be a little careful with it. Look at the fly all sides, make certain that we don't have any red gaps in there. And then I'll put a 4 or 5 turn whip finish right on that band. Get that seated down. Trim away my thread. Even this, I mean, I did not put that many wraps, but if you look carefully, you can see the head goes along and the black kind of comes up a little bit. I don't think that's a big deal once I put some lacquer on that in regards to the fly and certainly its fishability, as well as if you're tying these to present to somebody. Put a little bit more head cement on that. And I'll come back in a minute and put some clear lacquer on that. Put 1 or 2 coats. I'm not looking to build up a nice glossy head on this or anything. All I'm looking to do is to just secure that a little bit. It does give it a little bit of sheen, but it's mostly just to secure those threads so that they don't get abraded and start to come apart. So that is the Grayhound. Like I mentioned earlier, if you happen to be somewhere where you have some silver and gray shad or bait fish or something like that, I think this is a great pattern. I think it is a classic type of smelt pattern for the Maine Rangeley region where this was created. But it's a very, very handsome pattern. I'll be interested in trying this out in my local streams later this summer and this fall. So that's the Grayhound. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.